Organic channels are flat to minus 30% year over year. Paid channels are up 40% or more, often a lot more. I talked with a business the other day that saw organic traffic plummet by over 40%, and even more importantly, their revenue fall by more than 30%. Even some businesses I know who are having great years, we're seeing the same story hold true. One client of mine is having a massive revenue growth this year. They're up over 25% year on year. They're just paying for more of that revenue than ever before. Big tech gatekeepers are closing the gates. As I talked about here on the show a couple of weeks ago, Google recently reported its most profitable quarter ever. Meta reported revenue growth of 33%. Amazon's advertising services group grew 22% year on year. And over the last 12 months, it's generated revenue of over $70 billion. Almost all of these big tech gatekeepers' growth was driven from companies like you. Hell, Meta even acknowledged that their price per ad grew 12% in their most recent earnings call. None of these companies are admitting that they charge you more on earnings calls. They're bragging about it. In many cases, not only are companies I talk with paying more to folks that they've worked with for years, they're often paying for traffic and conversions that they never had to pay for before. Look at the continuing growth of metasearch for hotels. That has eaten into organic search in a big, big way. Similarly, the increasing budgets for paid social and creator partnerships have largely taken the place of organic social media for many businesses in a whole host of industries. These are entirely new line items in the budget that eat into your profitability. The individual numbers change by business, by industry, by month, by quarter, but the overall pattern is the same. More traffic arriving later in the purchase journey, and more from paid channels, no matter where the customer starts. This is not just a warning sign. It's so much more serious than that. One individual, who I'm keeping anonymous for obvious reasons and with their permission, put it in stark terms. He said, "We can't afford to go on like this. This isn't a question of traffic or conversions or revenue. For many businesses, it's a question of survival." This is episode 498 of Digital Reset. I'm Tim Peter. Today, we're talking about what it actually costs when you don't own your customer. Let's dive in. I was sitting in a monthly review with a relatively new client recently. On the surface, their numbers were fine. Not spectacular, but not terrible. Their revenue is slightly down year on year, just under 2%. But they're in a tough segment, so it was, expected. I'm definitely putting some quotes around that word. But I mean, we've all been there, right? We know sometimes we're going to have a tough year. Their total traffic was also down slightly more than 2%, and their conversion rate actually grew marginally. Direct navigation to their website was also up about 2%, and so was branded search. Overall, they thought that everything was very much in line with their expectations, and as a result, thought everything was, okay. They were prepared for this reality. It wasn't a huge shock to them. The truth is that their expected tough comparables year on year hid a much, much darker story. I mean, they were doing the right things. They were getting what they'd wanted. They were getting what they'd expected. And under the hood, they are slowly bleeding their business dry. Organic channels for this business, including search and social, were off by about 20%. Paid channels were up almost 85%. They were trading free traffic for paid traffic. The share of traffic literally flipped from 2-to-1 in favor of organic to 2-to-1 in favor of paid in a year. And because their revenue was holding steady, the marketing team had noticed it. While I can't share actual revenues or profits, safe to say that it's a material difference in terms of their marketing's profitability. The only good news here, and it's not much of that, is that the CFO hadn't really picked up on it yet either. We had a conversation the other day, the CFO and I, and the longer-term trend was news to her too. The mid-year review doesn't sound like it's going to be much fun for anyone. The client is far from alone. I'm seeing this everywhere. The pattern keeps turning up across almost every business I'm talking with these days. Some are a bit worse off, some are doing somewhat better. But when you look at the longer-term numbers, the general trend is the same. And most of these businesses aren't doing anything wrong specifically. In fact, they're following a playbook that for a long time was fairly popular. They worked with platforms that offer reach that looks great early on. They optimized for the reach and conversions that those platforms offer. And because it works, in vernacular I've used myself many times, they were fishing where the fishing's good. Their owned alternatives weren't as urgent because everything was performing, and I'm very much putting air quotes around that. And then fourth, the various platforms' algorithms and fees shifted, mostly gradually, in a couple of cases suddenly, and now the business has to scramble. This is a pattern I have seen again and again and again. This was the whole point of episodes 489 and 490 in early April. At its core, it's the fundamental problem my book was written to address. If you listened to last week's episode, it outlined what AI search is doing to organic traffic right now and how it's exactly the same pattern playing out in yet another part of the ecosystem. The toll that gatekeepers charge isn't a future risk. It's happening right now. The reality is that Google's changes to the way they present search results and Meta's changes to the way they display your content on Facebook and Instagram, and LinkedIn's changes to the way they display your content in your customers' feeds, and on and on and on, make it increasingly difficult for your brand and business to be seen without paying for that visibility. Think about it from the perspective of the client I talked about a few moments ago. If their organic channels were even flat this year, as opposed to down 20%, they'd actually have grown revenue year on year, despite the fact that they're facing a tough market. It's not going to get much better anytime soon either, not for them and probably not for you. Again, if you listened to last week's episode, Google proudly announced an array of changes like intelligent AI agents and a universal cart designed to engage customers and keep them inside Google's ecosystem and off your site. ChatGPT and Perplexity and Claude have already delivered or are working to deliver comparable features. Social media has acted similarly for years, downplaying the reach of content with links and promoting content that keeps users engaged within their platforms. How many times have you been on LinkedIn and seen a post that included the words, "link in the comments"? That's just one more symptom of the reality we're living with. You want to bet that any of these guys are going to reverse course on this? I sure wouldn't. They can't. Their quarterly numbers, the ones that I cited before the break, are how they keep their investors happy. If Sundar Pichai or Mark Zuckerberg or Andy Jassy or any other big tech CEO, any other gatekeeper, regardless of their size, suddenly announced they weren't going to monetize their traffic as aggressively any longer, or that they were looking for ways to drive more organic traffic and reduce paid opportunities, they might be fired even before the earnings call was over. You'd probably hear something like, yeah, we're experiencing technical difficulties, while they were escorting the now former CEO from the building, or shoving them out a window. You've heard me say gatekeeper's gonna gate many times. And given the context of what we're talking about, let me explain it in a single short sentence. Every platform that sends you customers eventually charges you more for those customers. That's it. That's what gatekeeper is going to gate means in a nutshell. It's shorthand for a reality that you live with today and will continue to live with for a long time to come. Probably forever if we're thinking about this critically. I didn't coin that phrase as a throwaway line. Instead, it's designed to describe a fundamental law of the digital economy. That's why the client I described earlier didn't really make a mistake. It's why they and any business that uses search or social media or other digital channels to find new business, essentially all of them, isn't wrong to partner with these folks either. It's also why businesses aren't stupid or wrong when they suddenly find themselves caught in one of the gatekeeper's traps. You work with companies that provide value. That's a good idea. And you continue working with them until they don't provide value. That's also a good idea. Sometimes, though, the line between provides value and doesn't provide value disappears, like the famous expression says, slowly, then all at once. That's what we're seeing right now with organic versus paid channels. I said on this podcast that organic search was still a key driver for many businesses as recently as 6 months ago. In some businesses, it's still true. While we were certainly seeing some shifts towards ChatGPT and other AI platforms, Google still delivered and may still deliver the lion's share of traffic, mostly via organic search, for most businesses. It's only in the last couple of months that it started to shift dramatically for many businesses. And of course, that shift is going to accelerate over time. Many businesses are seeing this problem today. Others won't see it for a while yet. That's okay. That's super normal. By the way, while I'm on this topic, I slightly misspoke last week during the episode while I was talking about this very topic. I'd said at the time that, and this is a quote, within a couple of months, search will no longer send you large volumes of traffic every day. It might not send you traffic at all. My point wasn't that Google will stop sending you large volumes of traffic within a couple of months. My point was that their new features launching later this summer, that is, in a couple of months, will be the reason Google stops sending you large volumes of traffic whenever or if that reality happens. I think it's far more likely that Google shifts from large volumes of organic traffic to large volumes of paid traffic versus traffic or no traffic. For starters, a huge share of their revenue and profits come from folks clicking their ads. They're not going to give up that traffic until they have a proven way to offset the revenue they'd give up from all of the paid clicks that they get today. Regardless, we need to acknowledge the world we're living in. We need to understand that the share of traffic you're getting and likely to get from free sources is declining. And once we've acknowledged those facts, we need to plan for what we're going to do about it. As we start to wrap up today's episode, I've got 3 questions for you. The first is, what percentage of your new customer acquisition traffic and revenue runs through channels you don't control? The second is, direct and organic traffic growing or shrinking as a share of your total traffic over the last 12 months? And the third is, if your top acquisition channel changed its terms tomorrow, what's your alternative that you're going to have in place within the next 90 days? If any of those questions produced an uncomfortable answer for you, next week we're going to look at the single question that will help you reframe how you think about all 3 of those questions. And the week after that, episode 500 of this podcast, I'm going to give you the most complete map, the most useful path that I can draw for what you can actually do about it. Today is part 1 of 3. I hope you'll stay with me because I think this is the single biggest set of questions we need to be thinking about right now. Again, to recap those, what percentage of your new customer acquisition traffic and revenue runs through channels you don't control? 2, is direct and organic traffic growing or shrinking as a share of your total traffic over the last 12 months? And 3, if your top acquisition channel changed its terms tomorrow or raised its fees tomorrow, what's your 90-day alternative? I hope you'll stick with me as we go through the next couple of episodes and work this out. In the meantime, if this episode gave you a clearer picture of the world we're living in right now and how you can start thinking about your path forward, do me a favor. Send it to a colleague who's currently struggling to figure this out for you and your business. It might save them and you from heading down the wrong direction. You can find the show notes for this episode at timpeter.com/podcasts. And if you're ready to go deeper on making your brand the answer that AI reaches for every time, my book, Digital Reset, Driving Marketing and Customer Acquisition Beyond Big Tech, is the roadmap you're looking for. You'll find the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening today. I genuinely appreciate you. Until next time, please be well, be safe, and be excellent to each other. I'll see you soon.